overwhelmed by science/technology, and we're going to talk more about the other crucial part in conservation, which is local communities. So, and also the communication behind conservation. So, let's get inspired and call the stage our moderator Alejandra and four beautiful storytellers, Carissa, Mary, Wika, and Emma. Stage is yours.
Wow. Cool. How are we feeling? Yeah, good. Excited? More excitement, guys. Good. Well, Emma, thank you for that. It was really nice, and I've actually seen this movie plenty of times before. It actually helped me prepare for my interview for Coral Catch. So yeah. But then you set the bar really high, and you made it really difficult for me. Now Rose has really high expectations. Yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for today. Today we have an amazing panel of these amazing, lovely ladies and storytellers. Because right now we need storytelling more than ever. You know, I think for far too long we kind of left science communication to the media. And is anybody here from media? No? Cool, because they do a terrible job, you know? Like they paint this doom and gloom picture about the ocean that doesn't inspire hope, doesn't inspire action, but that's what we need, and that is what these lovely girls are doing. So, can you please introduce yourselves? And yeah, just say in one word what storytelling means to you.
Oh Christ, I've prepared an entire presentation for later about what storytelling means, so I'll try and condense that into one word. Hi everyone, my name is Mads. I am a coral reef biologist, but also I am a storyteller. I'm a filmmaker. I am the storyteller in residence for Oceanographic magazine, so at the moment I'm a writer and a photographer as well. And I also share things about science and the ocean on social media. Storytelling in one word. Oh God, that's so hard. I guess connection? Connection.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. My name is Emma. I made the film just before. I am currently working as a teacher in Lombok as well as a digital correspondent for Ocean X. I started storytelling when I was in junior high school, when I was in grade 10. It's kind of shifted in the way that I do storytelling, but it started off with videos on social media, and then just continuing to do that. And I think for me, storytelling in one word, probably empowerment. Yeah, that would be my word.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm only the MC mode. I'm not the MC. Hi, so my name is Vika. I'm currently working at British Rock Conservation as storyteller, but my career and also my journey in storytelling actually started back in 2016 when I started working as a journalist for Kumparan, the Indonesian online media, and also for Vice Media, so maybe familiar. But after that, I kind of shifted from here and there, from media industry to more to the NGO field, and now I'm coming back to NGO and more in the marine conservation science communications. And for me, storytelling is hope, because I believe that storytelling have a very close storytelling way of telling your stories will give hope and extend hope to another people.
Hi everyone, my name is Carissa Cabrera. I'm the founder of Future Swell. We are a bridge between local communities, large nonprofit coalitions, and policymaking. I got my start in a really traditional marine science role. I was doing research for many years, and I was just so upset about how nonprofits didn't have the bandwidth to tell the stories that they needed. And I started Future Swell 5 years ago to help link those stories and also to connect them to large-scale impact. So really inspired by everyone I met this weekend, and I guess if I had to reduce all of the amazing work that's just been described to one word, I think that storytelling is probably a pathway towards equity, because we can uplift all of the voices when we have a megaphone and an amplifier in that way.
Damn, guys. So cool. Obviously, I'm girl crushing here. Anyway, I have a few questions. I'm gonna interview you because I need to learn myself, so that's good. So now that you already have the mic, Carissa, can you please share us a little bit more about your work and how are you bridging that between giving a voice to those projects, those communities, and obviously, you know, the wider audience. So can you share that about that?
Yeah, so who here was really inspired by like National Geographic films growing up, or photography, and really, yeah, all of us felt deeply connected, I think, to nature through media in some way. And I think in 2025, I founded Future Swell to be a modern pillar for that. So now we get information on social media. We follow ocean content creators to inspire us. We find mentors across the world through the internet. And so what our work does is we do a few different things. For nonprofits, we give our storytelling skills away to uplift their message with a shared goal. For coalitions, a lot of that is advocacy and policy. I work in the US, I work in the Kingdom of Hawaii, and we end up offering that message to help shift culture around an issue. And then we also steward a coalition of ocean content creators to help connect their messages to like large-scale impact work. So that could be marine protected areas. Right now we're running a campaign to defend marine monuments in the US. And it really coordinates storytellers towards one shared goal for the ocean. And I think that the more we work together and collaborate, and all the partnerships that we have here can help raise the alarm for so many issues, whether it's coral bleaching or gender equity in ocean conservation. So we have some wins under our belt, and I feel really grateful that we've been able to connect it to policy and shift culture to progress really big advocacy wins for oceans in the US.
I love that. Wika, so you are on the other side of the sort of side or table. You are one of the organizations, or representing one of the organizations that needs their story being told. So can you share a little bit more of your experience in that role? And trying to find, you know, people like Carissa and Future Swell to amplify that story.
From my experiences like working for organizations, sometimes storytelling can be challenging in that field, especially because like when you're an organization, especially when you're a big organization, you have so many numbers, you have so many data that are like super stiff and strict, and it kind of like makes you sometimes like difficult to find the emotions and also like to kind of like make it into a story. So like in my side, like when we are dealing with like so many reports and so many data and numbers, we need to try to find the emotions behind it. So we don't see data or numbers just as a number, but we try to see, okay, so what does this number actually speak about? And then like try to see, oh, it's actually about a person. So like say like we have 50 female divers able now to go diving and be a dive master. But we don't see them just as a data, but then we try to, oh, it actually means that there is one woman, they're able now being a dive master, and now how we can kind of like craft the stories. And then we know that this number doesn't mean just like, okay, we now can craft the stories, and then we try to collaborate with the other like people, like influencers, or maybe like people that also works in the same field, try to kind of like share the stories out of the organization. So I think from my side, as an organization, sometimes like that's the challenge. Oh shoot, numbers, what's the impact? And then try to find like the emotions behind the number, and then gather with other people that works in the same field, but also have the same mission to spread out the stories, spread out the emotions, and share it with the other people to the wider audience. I think that makes sense.
It does make sense. Thank you very much. Matt, I'm sure that you can add onto this because you are a scientist. I'm assuming that you work with a lot of complex data and science. How do you make something so complex at times accessible, to the general public?
I really love what you said about giving emotion to numbers, because this is famously what academia has done so badly for such a long time. When I started my career, and I'll talk about this later in my presentation, but when I started my career as a scientist, I very quickly was like, well, does it really matter if no one knows about the results outside of these academic journals that people have to pay to see? So that's why I became a storyteller as well, because I was like, shit, I was like, damn, people need to know about what's happening and about the research that we're doing. And something that I found really interesting is that how over the years, in the 10 years that I've been a scientist and a storyteller, our audience has changed. And the things that worked 10 years ago in engaging people with the ocean aren't necessarily what is going to engage Gen Z now. And so something that I've had to adapt to, because I think being a storyteller is constantly adapting. You learn one skill, then a new camera comes out, you have to learn another skill. Then you have to learn how to reach a new audience. Then you have to learn how to do a new thing. And you're constantly evolving and adapting, a bit like a coral in a changing ocean. A storyteller is always adapting to a new audience. And in the last few years, I've had to learn, how firstly do I give emotion to numbers? And then secondly, how do I then give the emotion to someone who has the attention span of 15 seconds in a reel on Instagram? And to be honest, I think there's no set way to do that. You kind of have to keep churning out content until there's something that resonates with people. And I think truthfully, the beautiful thing about storytelling and also the challenging thing about storytelling is that what resonates with one person might not resonate with other people. And that's also, coming back to what you were saying about policy, what resonates with the Gen Z audience, for example, isn't what's going to resonate with the president of Indonesia. And both of those groups of people are people that we need in order to protect coral reefs, for example. Anyone see the new David Attenborough documentary, Oceans? Came out recently. What was wonderful about that is it did quite well online. And it was also, I was at the premiere, the King of England was there, which was really cool. It was shown to our Prime Minister as well, Keir Starmer. And what was really disappointing was that last week we found out that bottom trawling, which was one of the main themes in the film, even though it had been shown to every member of our government, it had been shown at the UN Ocean Conference, our government decided that actually no, within marine protected areas in the UK, we're still going to allow this form of destructive fishing to continue. And so really, a lot of us in the storytelling community were like, right, okay, well, you've got David Attenborough saying it, you've got some of the best filmmakers in the world saying it, you've got one of the best documentaries that's come out in recent times, and clearly we're still getting something wrong because governments in this case are not finding the message, they're not relating to the message. Us all are in our community, everyone online is. And so, yeah, my experience as a storyteller and my experience as a scientist has taught me that we need more storytellers, we need everyone storytelling, and we need people storytelling in different ways because, as Chasing Coral said, referencing Rose's, one of Rose's favourite films and one of my favourite films, the ocean has a PR problem, and unfortunately we're nearly 10 years on from Chasing Coral, and that is still very much an issue today.
Wow, honestly. That's so well put, and I actually, you stole two of my big names that I was going to use for the closing. The reference to Chasing Coral and David, but that's okay. But you see the importance of these films and this visual storytelling. But as you also mentioned, there's so much more and so many different ways of storytelling. So this is not directed to any of you. Whoever wants to answer. But yesterday in the panel about how to fund your mission, we also talked a lot about the importance of storytelling and communicating. So it's not just about the general audience and policy, but it's really to get money and to make people care as much about the ocean or your mission as we do. So if anybody can as well share a little bit about that, you know, and how can you adapt your strategies when storytelling for these different audiences, and maybe give a little bit more clear examples, because I know I struggle with this, you know. Sometimes I have to create content for Instagram, but then I also have to write a report for stakeholders, and then I also have to do a grant writing for very complicated people. So yeah, any insights, girls?
I think, yeah, that's very true. I think like the short film, for example, that came out of inspiration from my sister who joined batch 5. Yeah, and I did my dive master with Catherine, who was from batch 4, and so that came out of the ways that the Coral Catch program has transformed their lives. And originally, you know, both Mads and I work with Ocean Culture Life quite closely. Originally, it was going to be about like coral restoration, because they were looking for grants. They were looking for grants and ideas on ocean conservation. And then after talking to all the girls, it ended up becoming a little bit more a story on sisterhood and a story on community. And I think the main purpose of me proposing the film to Ocean Culture Life to get the grant was actually for the purpose of supporting Rose's mission. And so it wasn't like a film that I would want to show, like I applied to all these film festivals. It wasn't like a film so that I could show it around. I mean, I would, of course, show it to everyone, but the main purpose actually for me was like to support Coral Catch by allowing them to have something that shows proof of concept. Mainly is the thing is to show stakeholders when applying for grants, when Coral Catch is applying for grants, showing them that this has changed. At least 24, now it's doubled, it's almost like 44 now. So Rose and I were talking yesterday, we might need to do a part 2, because there's like another 20 women who have been transformed. But the whole purpose of it was to show that, this is a real program, this is a genuine program that's changed lives. And so for me particularly, when I'm creating stories or creating videos, like Matt said, sometimes it's like an Instagram reel, or sometimes it's for something specific. If you're applying for something, I just like think about what is the purpose behind it and who are you actually talking to. You also have to change the way that you speak in videos based on who you're talking to. Are you like just the way that you change into your MC voice from speaker voice? You have kind of got to think about all of those different types of things. I think everyone here might even have a different audience. Like my audience in particular is like the general Indonesian Gen Z public. So I started my videos when I was 15 because my mom is like an English teacher, history teacher. Like Tata, I think in batch 6 also was, in my class. She knows my mom. And like my mom would come back listening to Democracy Now!, telling me all these like stories of what was going on in the world during COVID. And I felt like the Indonesian public didn't get that. Were super detached from what was going on, and it was the main stories going around everywhere. And so my videos started with English videos with Indonesian subtitles, like made specifically for the Indonesian youth and the public, and I try and continue to make videos like that. And so I think you kind of got to adapt in the way that you speak, the way that you make your subtitles, what kind of B-roll are you using based on your audience. And I think most of the storytellers here slowly start to know your audience more, and like Matt says, one thing might not resonate with everyone. And sometimes that's okay too, like if you don't enjoy my videos, that's okay. Maybe it's not for your community, that's alright, that's fine. But yeah, I think when it comes to like adapting your videos, the more you do it, the more you find your niche, I think, as well. Yeah. Just to add a little bit, also to understand the interest of each audiences that you're targeting to. So like, let's say, we're targeting like Indonesian audiences in terms of marine conservation. What would be like their main interest in that? And when we're targeting like government, like maybe like for government, they don't care about promotions. They only care about the numbers because they have to see it like in a bigger view, right? They have to think about like the budget proposition or how they can allocate the budget, so they don't care about about the emotions. So we need to put out more numbers, for instance, in terms of my government. So I think to really understand the interest of each audience that we're targeting is very important.
I wanted to say something about what Emma said as well. Making hero films for NGOs. A hero film is a film that's not for a film festival, it's not a documentary, it's just a piece about the project. And what's actually really funny is we got a grant for the same thing. So many years ago, I got a grant from Ocean Culture Life, the same people. Anyone here who's in science or storytelling, by the way, Ocean Culture Life, they're small grants for scientists and storytellers to do with the ocean. So keep an eye on them. They're an amazing community as well. Shout out to them. We love Tamsin. She's another amazing woman in marine science, and Matt, but who cares about him in this conference? And the thing about hero films is they have this incredible role in being able to showcase a project. And something that happens often is that I see so many wonderful science projects and NGOs simply not have the ability, and this is where your work comes in with, is it Oceanswell? Futureswell. Oceanswell's in Sri Lanka. With Futureswell is so many NGOs are not amazing at storytelling and they don't have these films, and a lot of grants now are asking for you to attach a YouTube video of your project. And I've seen this more and more and more now, and some projects, for example, Nature over there, Resharp, the whole team has had so much media come this year. Coral Garden is absolutely smashing it online. You know, everyone knows Coral Gardens in the coral space. But then you have very, very small NGOs that are doing fantastic work on the ground, but have never had the capability or the media, or even, as you mentioned, you appeal to an Indonesian audience, or even simply the language skills to get onto that international stage and to have the media made for them to then even be more eligible for grants. And I think, honestly, storytelling and raising money for funding is intrinsically linked to this point. For our program in Raja Ampat and Our Ocean, if we hadn't have had that film, we wouldn't have got any of the last 4 grants that we got. Every single one of those, I know for a fact. Obviously our project is strong, but when you're against 10 other projects saying exactly the same thing, without the storytelling around them, I don't think we would have got funded.
And that is the power of storytelling, right? You're bringing the ocean and the impact and the work that we're doing closer to people that are making decisions that are very far from it, you know, and you are creating that emotional connection that we might have, but a lot of people don't, right? So that is the, you know, the power of this visual storytelling, but obviously there's different ways. Carissa, I would love to hear a little bit from you, because you are, you know, supporting these projects, but kind of bridging. But also, how does that process look like? And how do you also manage, you know, creating a film for that will be useful for them, but also keeping your creativity, your approach, your storytelling recipe, basically, while also satisfying them and what they want to communicate?
Well, you said something, Alejandra, about how you're writing grant reports and then you're producing reels, and Futureswell as a consultancy also supports nonprofits with strategic development, and so we're writing grants and we're disseminating research, and then we're putting it into short videos and long videos. And so the beautiful thing about investing in a storytelling toolkit is that you can give it away to partners and projects that you believe in, and working with local communities to offer that toolkit to them is a really critical need that we have right now in the ocean conservation movement. And it's not something that you can just start, because it comes with a lot of lived experience of finding the balance of what it means to work with local communities. I'm never going to be the right voice for the projects that I work on locally. And that's important as the producer and the creative behind it to know who might be. And so we actually had a huge policy win in Hawaii this year. I spent the last 6 years trying to pass the first visitor green fee in the nation, and we passed it in May. And it goes into effect in January. And so much of that work, because we're talking about funding, it's supposed to generate about $100 million a year for ocean climate work. And part of that was tailoring the message to each individual policy. So I know that our client Kuleana Coral is going to resonate with his West Side legislator, and so we're going to make a video for them specifically. And this was a strategy and a digital organizing strategy that ended up resonating with each individual lawmaker. And it took a lot of external factors, internal factors, but ultimately we were shaping the conversation around the solution, and that comes with knowing who you're interviewing, knowing what the goal is, having trust with those people you're interviewing. You shouldn't be going in if you don't have deep relationships already. And also, like, centering ethical storytelling, because you're not you need to make sure they own that story, whatever the final product looks like, so that it can have like the most impact possible, and also buy-in and support from their spheres of influence. Does that answer your question?
That does answer my question, and I would actually like to ask you for that toolkit. It would be very helpful for me too.
I didn't write it down, I was just in my 20s.
Okay, perfect. No, but it did answer my question, and maybe some of you as well can answer. I would also like to understand a little bit more the approach of how you take this, because sometimes we're communicating very sensitive messages, and how can you as well lead with feedback and people coming to you and be like, oh, I don't think this really captures my story. And I'm just asking because a month ago we had this incredible group of videographers, honestly, kick-ass men, men unfortunately. But then we were doing the content with the girls, with the Superwoman, and we had the script and we had the plan and everything went well. And then the Superwoman came, actually our MC Tanya and Wika, and they were like, no, I don't think that the voiceover is really capturing who we are. It's saying that strength is, about doing the same as men, but no, it's about caring. It's about lifting each other up. And then they went to the videographers and they were like, let's get the story straight, But they were so welcoming to that feedback, and they were so keen on, listening to us, because obviously it's a video for us, but also because it makes it better, right, when people contribute. So I would just like to hear a little bit more from you, and if you have that experience as well when creating content for other organizations or for your own as well.
Sometimes, when you're a storyteller, we have a tendency to put our voice first when we're building a story. And that is a challenge for us, actually. Especially if you are making a content for another organization or another community. Sometimes we tend to forget that what is actually the real voice, what's the original voice, who actually has the stage, supposed to have the stage to share the stories. So every time I have to build a story on someone else's story or another community story, what I would like to do is to sit down with them first, really understand how they actually craft their own story. So I don't build my own script first, or not building my own articles first, or making my reels first, but I need to hear their stories first. So I come to them, I ask them, hey, what's your story? How would you like it to be crafted? So they direct me, not me directing them. I can only be a help of making it okay, putting it on the platform, putting it and also extending it to the right audiences, but the voices need to be their voices, their stories. So always put them first, and also try to understand, okay, what kind of maybe a cultural sensitivities, especially when we're dealing with indigenous communities. Sometimes what we think it's gonna be beautiful, it's gonna be such a very beautiful story, but actually in their sides, in their groups, it's actually taboo, for instance, like that. So I think that's very important to put ourselves as a storyteller, put in the back first, okay, we give them the space to guide us. So I think that's the most important thing, especially when we're doing and also creating stories for another people. So we're just a helper, a platform, so not us, the storyteller.
I wanted to add, I fully get what you were saying, and I think, everyone else can agree, when you go directly to the person, that's the best way that you can kind of encapsulate what they want to communicate. I recently just started a fellowship at Earth Journalism Network, where you get content creators get mentored by journalists. And there goes my phone. It's really interesting because in a lot of ways, the storytelling that we're doing on social media, it's just journalism and in different forums, and it's very similar to going to what type of sources. Is it primary sources or secondary sources, right? And so the primary source is going to be the people who are on the ground, who are actually doing the work, and what do they want communicated, just like Rika was saying. And so when you go to those primary sources and then you ask what things do you want to share, and in what way, in what tone as well, that's kind of, I think, the best way that you're able to incorporate your creativity with their story. I think at the end of the day, storytelling all goes back to why are you actually creating this content? And if you're creating it for the purpose of the person, and like which it should be in a lot of ways, in every way, if you're creating it for them, to empower them, to show their story, then of course it should be exactly the way that, you know, exactly what they want to share, right? And so if you're doing it, if you're showing it in maybe a different way and you don't want to adjust it, then maybe it's for the wrong reasons and in some views, I think. So I just wanted to share that as well. And I think, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing onto what you were both saying. I think I'm obviously not Indonesian. I've lived in Indonesia for 8 years now. I do speak Indonesian, but as a filmmaker, especially working in communities, I recognize that my Indonesian is not good enough to capture the nuances and the detail of the stories of people that I'm working with. Which has meant that in recent years I've been able to incorporate more, and now that we have more Indonesian filmmakers, you know, I mean, not that they don't exist, but the visibility is really, really important because it's hard to find women in specific roles. That's why things like this Coral Catch conference matter so much. But in addition to what you both were saying about capturing local voices and making sure you're not telling the story that you want to tell, is also, if we go right back to the beginning of storytelling, whether you're telling a story about research, whether you're telling a story about wildlife, whether you're telling a story about communities, you need to do your research. You need to make sure that you know as much as you can, whether it's going on Google Scholar, whether it's trawling social media, whether it is interviewing people. Research, in the same way that it underpins science, it underpins storytelling. If you start telling a story based purely on what you think is happening in your head, then you are always going to misrepresent that story. And unfortunately, that's something that we see happening time and time again, and not just with people, but also with wildlife. Now, when I watch back over many of the big wildlife sequences that have happened in the last 30, 40 years, BBC, National Geographic, often, and I say this with confidence, a group of men who wanted to go out and film a story about wildlife, and yes, it was wet men, because if you didn't know this already, I probably shouldn't say this on camera. This isn't a live stream, is it? Wildlife filmmaking started because a privileged bunch of white men wanted to go and film animals in exciting locations. And that's not a criticism. I would have loved to have done that too in the 50s when wildlife and nature was untouched. And unfortunately, being in the wildlife film industry, this is something that I still see today. There's a lot of barriers for women, there's a lot of pushback, and it is still very much a boys' club. It's very, very, very difficult to break in. Just to put a statistic behind this, on all of the big wildlife productions that have happened in the last, I don't know, 10 years, I think it is, less than 5% of the people were women behind the camera. So that's how little women are still represented in camera operator roles in this industry. Now I've forgotten what my original point was. I started bashing men, which obviously I actually believe that men have to be involved in the conversation. What was the question?
What was my question? No, you were going to ask something about...
I was talking about doing research. Oh yes, so in a lot of these productions that historically happened, there was this element of giving wildlife this storyline, and it's still done today, because how do you connect people with wildlife? You relate it to human emotion, you relate it to human stories. But sometimes this gets taken a little bit too far, and what's ended up happening is often these wildlife sequences that you see on these shows, they were shot over 5 years apart with different individual animals cut together to portray a narrative that didn't necessarily happen. And it's not to say it doesn't happen ever, but I'm almost kind of against this because I don't think it's representative. And I think in the same way that we can, this is a long-winded point, was I think that in the same way that we often misrepresent communities, we have done a very good job at misrepresenting both nature and wildlife as well. So my point being, as a storyteller, it's very important that you do your research and that you are authentic and true to the story.
And that line of authenticity, and this is as well about, so we were talking about a little bit storytelling for organizations or projects, or what you just mentioned, nature itself. But But there's also our stories, you know. You guys also have a personal voice, a personal brand, and I would like to as well talk a little bit about that, right? Because then you don't need to do research on your own life, but it's also about communicating with vulnerability and honesty and authenticity. And I would love to, just hear a little bit about what you have to say around that.
I'll just start on this quickly, and then we've heard enough of my voice. I talk about this in my next presentation, but I've spent the last large part of my career talking about my research on social media. It's really a double-edged sword, because I think if you follow ocean content creators, a lot of people post about like this amazing ocean life and swimming with wonderful marine life, and not that I don't do that, but it's not really representative of being a marine scientist. I cry a lot of the time. I'm constantly burnt out. When I'm working in Raja Ampat, I lose a lot of weight because there's not really enough nutrition. My skin gets really bad. This year I lost 600 pounds of research equipment. My roof came off my hut, and then I slept with a mouldy bed for 4 months. It's really like, being a field scientist and doing the work I do is really, really tough. And this year I decided to take a new approach and to communicate the hard parts of it. And what surprised me was, instead of putting people off of this career, actually I think it engaged more people than ever. More people were interested. And I think Gen Z, unlike the millennials who have grown up with that, I want my entire house being beige and I'm going to organize my entire pantry and everything is perfect and curated. Millennials like this raw, behind the scenes, the nitty gritty. They want to see people fail. They want to cancel everyone. They want to see you suffer. And actually, I think that's maybe quite popular, because my career is basically suffering 24/7 in the name of saving coral. So I think authenticity is really important. And I also don't want to sit here and say that social media is fun and being authentic is fun, because a lot of people have a lot to say, and you have to be okay with everyone having an opinion on what you're doing and what you're wearing, and you're too sexualized, you're not sexualized enough, weird creepy comments from men, women hating on other women, people just hating you because of your face, like literally being a face of your research, I think is really important. But I also want to preface it with saying, in a world where everyone wants to be an influencer, I don't think it's necessary for everyone to be an influencer, because emotionally it's a very challenging thing.
I agree with that. I think, this, especially the word vulnerability, like hits really hard, because I think you're right. Like there's the beautiful side of social media, and then there's like the realistic hardship side. And I encourage everyone, it's really easy to make videos and to post them. I think a lot of people like to there's like a mental block because of the worry of how people view you, and I had that for sure. Like when I first started, I think the reason I was able to start was because it was COVID and I didn't have to go see my friends. And so I could just post it and then hide in my room because no one was going outside. And then I started doing it and I realized, well, actually this is not that, it's not uncool or anything like that. And being able to show happy tears and sad tears and frustrations are really is a really important part, and I think that's when people really resonate with you. It's showing like the hard work, and it's showing how much you care, and it's showing, I think the biggest thing, like the biggest kind of thing right now is showing when you're really burnt out. I think a lot of people can resonate with burnout, especially in so many different fields. And so when you see someone who is an influencer or someone who is just makes cool content, you see they're burnt out, me too, I'm also burnt out. And so I've seen some of the videos that you posted as well, and I see a lot of Carissa's videos and everything like that, and I think showing those sides allows people to resonate with you. And so I think it's okay to have that mental block. I think everyone has that mental block to show that part of you or to post online. But I think the main thing that my mom will always tell me is that people don't care maybe as much as you think. That's as in I think people care so much about actually, they really don't. They'll probably just end up watching it, liking it, scrolling past. So if anyone like wants to start posting videos, and a lot of Coral Catch girls are encouraged to make their own videos and to post, and I think that's a really amazing part of the program as well. And Ale, you've done an amazing job with the storytelling that you've done with Coral Catch. I think we need to give you a clap. Yeah, so like, you know, I love watching the videos of the Coral Catch girls doing all of their programs, and we get to see that. And yeah, I'm just gonna wrap that up there.
Yeah, I would like to add something. First, Max, I really liked what you mentioned, how you shifted your content, because I've been following for a while. But I was like, oh, her life looks perfect. She sees so many wonderful creatures. But actually, I saw a video where you got really vulnerable, and it was when I was scrolling through Instagram dying with dengue. And I was like, my life sucks. But then it helped me like connect in a different level, you know, and be like, okay, like, yeah, we're all going through these hardships, but we also all care about the ocean. But, you know, we're all human, and I think that's really, really beautiful. So thank you for that. You got me out of my mental struggles. But yeah, no, and I thank you, Emma, as well, for saying about the storytelling, but I cannot take the credit because it's really the Superwoman, and they're telling their story. And I think part of storytelling is as well being super open to constant feedback. Because the last batch, we were trying to do a lot of this curated content, but then the girls were like, yeah, that's not our story. We are goofy, we're silly. That's what you need to show. So now this entire batch, they're responsible for their own. So, well, thank you. It's them who have to take it all, the credit. I'm not sure. Timekeeping, how are we doing? Are we good on time? We finish in 15 minutes, but I was already talking to a lot of people yesterday, and a lot of them have a lot of questions about storytelling. So before we move on to the question section, I would like to ask each one of you if you could share one piece of advice. You know, I think with storytelling, it's very accessible. Now with a phone, you can do so much. So you can speak to any of these girls and just give them one piece of advice on how to start. What would that be?
I think we touched on it a little bit through themes without this in this panel, but your story is going to resonate with a different audience than someone else's story, and that means that we have a really strong opportunity right now to create a decentralized network of tens of thousands of storytellers all around the world sharing their story, working within the sisterhood, working on reefs, working to defend whales. And we need that for the ocean right now because our communications have been weak and haven't met the needs of what the ocean needs right now in our lifetime. And I try to view it as the systems that we have that have caused harm for the ocean and for people are really fossilized stories. These systems were created by stories that were told over many years by powerful people who were not represented in this room, and the ways that we reshape and redesign those systems is also through stories. And so it might feel like your little video isn't doing something, but it's doing something for someone, and it's like it's a little pebble being thrown at this system that we're overhauling to replace with a just and equitable system that, you know, values the ocean. So my advice is start now, do it scared, be cringe, don't worry about your friends, post it and disassociate, put your phone down, and tell the stories that are important to you and your communities because they're gonna resonate with someone across the world, and you're not gonna see the growth of that plant till later on, but it's important that we lay those seeds now because we don't have much time.
I think my little piece of advice of being a storyteller, especially when you're just about to start, is to remind you again what's the philosophy and the fundamental of being a storyteller. So be brave to tell your story, but also at the same time be empathetic and sensitive. And instead of speaking more, listen more. Because sometimes like, oh yeah, we're a storyteller, we can speak, without be actually enough listening to the stories. So I think that's my little piece of advice to start. I think for me, my piece of advice is like kind of similar to what Carissa was saying. Is like your story, you know, you might not feel like it's doing much, but it might be doing something for someone else. I think for me, like the main thing is you actually never know what can come out of your storytelling, and like the way I was like always doing environmental advocacy, but the way that I got into ocean conservation was I made a 1-minute video. It was a 1-minute video competition, and I won, and I ended up going to the Seychelles for free with my sister, and that's where I did my open water, and it just seemed like super silly, and I made it on my phone, edited on CapCut, like on my phone, and I just posted it. But like that 1-minute video led to a complete change of direction for my future, and I think that will, and that like completely. And so I think the main thing is like, you know, posting might not seem like much, but like it could definitely resonate with someone else. It can be doing something for someone else, but you never know, like that could change your life in a lot of different ways. So I think just do what you want to do, post what you want to post, and you never know what can come out of it is, I think, the piece of advice that I would give to everyone.
They were such amazing points. I don't know if there's anything left for me to say. Out of interest, who here has ever posted a video on social media to do with science or research or anything to do with that? Okay, like 50% of us. Is that who wants to do that? I can't tell if that's more or less, to be honest. So anyone who wants to start, and I'll talk about social media in particular, I'm going to provide some practical tips. Number one, give yourself 20 minutes to edit that video. Whether you're editing on CapCut, whether you're editing on your laptop, whatever. If you're editing for social media, the turnover is so quick these days, don't go for perfection. Give yourself 20 minutes and then post it. Obviously, I caveat that with, if your video doesn't make any sense, then just don't post it. But give yourself 20 minutes, that's what I do. And my second piece of advice, a practical tip again, is, and this goes for, who's a scientist in this room? Cool, a lot of us. How many of you have ever been on camera? Well, all of you at some point might end up with a camera in your face, because unfortunately that seems to happen to scientists. I've been on both sides of that, and it's always funny to see which scientists have been in front of a camera before. Nation's been in front of a camera many, many times. So my advice is, if you are a scientist, and whether you want to or don't want to be in front of a camera, you probably will end up at some point in front of a camera if you're doing research. Practice talking to yourself on your camera or in the mirror. It's a really important skill to learn. Public speaking is one thing, but I promise you all those thoughts go out the window when there is a camera a foot in front of your face. So practice speaking to your camera, practice speaking to yourself, save those videos on your iPhone, and over time, see yourself get better and better at public speaking, because it's a really, really important skill in storytelling. So 20 minutes to edit a video and film yourself.
The 20 minutes of editing, it's actually become really easy to edit. Like a lot, like there are a lot of tools now with like AI. Like the thing that you can, the fact that you can just make my captions for me, like is just changed. Like when, oh my gosh, like the amount of time I would take to like make the captions like 6 years ago. And like, so I think utilize the tools that some of those platforms give, and it can make it a lot easier. Just a second piece of advice.
Wow, thank you girls, honestly. Amazing advice, amazing insights throughout this entire panel. I mean, obviously I am biased, but this has been my favorite, although Clara's yesterday was pretty good too. And everybody's actually, but you know. I think it's really beautiful because, you know, storytelling it's about art, it's about science, it's about making things, you know, more human and connecting to people that maybe don't care about the ocean and our mission as much as we do. But these girls are doing that, so thank you for that. Before we close, do anybody has questions for them? What is it, Tanya?
Can I ask?
Yeah, you can.
So, it's very lovely to have you guys here to Beijing, because I don't know, like 10 years here, I would love to be a science communicator, but I actually don't know how to step into it. So the thing I want to ask is more not about the practical things, how to do it, storytelling, but so you say that I platform, and you guys also have a different style of telling stories. That outside of, like a very practical way and very, like a professional working style, how become a storyteller change your life, change how you see things, change how you interact with others, how you see life. Like it's not in front of the camera, but what just changed your mind and perspective. Is there any specific moment that, oh, I could think about this way because I became a storyteller, or I could make this impact to myself, to my family, to my friends, to the communities around me because I learned to tell stories in a very practical way.
So, becoming a storyteller really helps me connect with people. So I think there is a specific story that changed me. One of it is when we made a short documentary about the Bajo tribe in Meko. Meko is located in Adonara Island, which is located in East Nusa Tenggara. So when I went there, I actually went with you. I think we all feel like, yeah, we did that documentary together. Yeah, so we went there. Yeah, it's for Oxfam. So we went there, and we met these Bajo tribe people. We know that Bajo people is actually water people, right? Like they literally have like their lung capacity is like bigger than us. So they basically they live on the ocean, they live on the water. But due to climate crisis, they face such a big challenges in getting fishes. If they go like fishing just like near their area, they wouldn't get any fish. They have to go for 1 or 2 months, go on the open ocean to get fish, just to catch some fish. And then they try to find another way of living. So most of the people, Bajo people that live in Maka Island, now they are gardening. So to fulfill their livelihoods, they have to garden. They have to plant something because now they no longer can to get any fish from like the ocean closer to them. And it's so costly, and also it's so unpredictable for them to go to the open oceans because the storms, because you never know like when the typhoon comes now, because like the climate patterns is just like so unpredictable. They couldn't. It's not worth their life to kind of like go so far away from home. So they try to change their way of living. So from being an ocean people, now they have to plant. They're being a gardener now on the island. So that stories literally like makes me think like, wow. It's the crisis, that when even like people that has been historically living on the ocean, they now have to change the whole life just to fulfill their livelihood. So that's actually like the story that makes me shift like from being just a storyteller from the social science. Now I jump into medical conservation because like that kind of story really like, oh, shots. It's a crisis. It's not scary, but like you have that kind of like fright, fear. So that actually like changed my life, and the whole trajectory, my career trajectory changed now. Like from a corporate like a credit agency, now I'm working for an NGO, working on medical consultation. So that's how it changes me. It changes me a lot, and that's just one story out of like many other wonderful stories that personally changed me.
Something about that's been so special about this conference is this is the first all-women conference focused on coral reefs in Indonesia, and something that we all share is this lived experience of not feeling confident enough, imposter syndrome, struggling to take up space. And when you move into storytelling in front of the camera, it really allows you to work through all that. You have to figure out who you are, figure out what your message is, build confidence, and regardless of the impact it makes on the other side of the video, that is really valuable for everyone here because you have to confront all of it through storytelling. And then on the other side of it, I have become such a better ocean conservationist because I get to tell stories. when I was primarily doing research, I was just so focused on one thing, on one issue, that I was forgetting the like interconnected reality of living on planet ocean. And now I get to interview people who are working on one topic that I didn't study during my schooling. And that makes me a more well-rounded ocean conservationist to then bring that to the movement. And so whether you're behind the camera or in front of it, it's greatly going to benefit you as an individual. And at least that's what I've experienced.
I think for me, and this maybe circles back to a piece of advice, but the way that storytelling changed my life, and something that one of my close friends always says to me is like, you actually never know who's watching, and like social media is kind of crazy, like anybody could be watching. Maybe that's Senna who's watching, and then she invites you to do a master class, for example. You know, that's, you know, you don't know, and like, you know, for me, like I'm so blessed to be able to work for OceanX as a contracting digital correspondent, but the way that that came about was not an application. That was, I made a video as a young explorer, and then we were doing a live stream, and then head of media from OceanX was just happened to be watching, and then messaged me on LinkedIn. So sometimes the opportunities that you find in life that can change your life, or that can lead to like experiences and career opportunities, you know, that can come from storytelling, because someone might just be, you know, able to make a decision that can invite you somewhere or ask you to do something, and they just might be scrolling on their own personal Instagram and find you. I'm sure you guys as well have had people reach out to you and DM you and, you know, say, do you want to come do this or do you want to go do that, because they were just watching your Instagram. So I think storytelling can change your life, because that might not be why you post about it, but that can happen, because you never know, because social media and like the algorithm is, you know, you don't know what's going on. So I think that's how it kind of changed my life. I always think about that. I never know who's watching. So.
Again, I don't really have too much to add, but I just want to say, I think that you should be on television. I would love to see you presenting television. You are wonderfully captivating. If maybe I lost an eardrum on the first day. But seriously, I really think that you would be a fantastic person to be a face for our ocean. Yeah, seriously. Firstly, we don't see enough Indonesian women on television, especially in the West where I'm from. We should talk after this, because it would be really cool to create something good. I think you have a fantastic aura that should be on television. And why? And to, you know, briefly answer how storytelling has changed my life, I want to come back to something that you said, which is, as scientists, we get pigeonholed into these tiny, tiny things. I've been a coral reef biologist since my master's, when I studied coral reef biology. Prior to that, I did biosciences, so the world that I studied was very broad. You know, my undergraduate was everything from cancer biology through to cell biology, and with a little bit of marine. And one of the wonderful things about being a storyteller is that if I was just doing science, my head would be stuck in the coral reef, and I would never probably look up or look out of my tiny corner of the world that I'm not going to say trying to save, but trying to study, learn, understand, and protect. And because of storytelling, I've had the wonderful opportunity to meet so many people from communities all around the world. My understanding of how climate affects different communities is so much broader. I've now spent a lot of time in the polar regions, in the Arctic, and that never would have happened if I just focused on science. Storytelling has expanded the way that I see the world, the way that I feel about the world, the way that I interact with people and everyone. And I'm incredibly grateful for it, because obviously as a storyteller you get to share. You're a vessel, like you were saying earlier, you're just the vessel really for people's stories, for places, for things. But also storytelling has shared so much with me. And I'm incredibly grateful for the stories that I've been allowed to share, that I've now allowed to interact with, and have shaped my life in a way that I see and interact with the world.
Wow, girls. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much. Honestly, this is what we need, you know, more women with these powerful voices telling our story in the right way. And I think that you're all doing that. And Tanya, you didn't ask me that question, but I'm still gonna answer. Well, what storytelling has done for me is that actually made me connect with all of you. You know, like I was never part of like this working in a space full of women and connecting with you girls. You know, to talk about your story, I had to listen to your story, what Rita was saying, and you've done so much to me, just on a personal level. So thank you all. We're gonna end up this panel, but if you do have any more questions, please look up these lovely ladies during, you know, lunch or coffee breaks and ask them directly. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening.